I think Matt would still beat Rand at dice, even if the outcome affected the battle against the Shadow.
Rand would just change the stakes of the roll.
Matt would roll the dice, they'd roll in his favor, and then there would be an earthquake that shifted the table.
Matt would be like, I win everything on this side of the table. He rolls, wins, and then an earthquake shifts the two sides, and Rand actually wins. Rand goes meta.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Shall we ride forth?
Chapter 44. 5 will ride forth, and our symbol is the flame of Tarvalon. For Varen? Question mark?
That is a good question mark. Varen is the only connection I have here to... It's the only female channeler.
She's the only channeler in this whole chapter. I mean, other than Rand. Yeah, she's the only female. Perrin eyed the villagers warily, self-consciously hitching at a too short cloak, embroidered on the chest, and with some holes in it, not even patched. But none of them gave him a second glance despite his strange mix of clothes and the axe on his hip. Hurin had a coat with blue spirals across the chest under his cloak, and Matt wore a pair of baggy trousers that made bunches where they were stuffed into his boots. That had been all they had been able to find that would fit back in the abandoned village. Perrin wondered if this one would be abandoned soon too. Half the stone houses were empty, and in front of the inn, up the dirt street from them, 3 ox carts, loaded too heavily in great mounds, and everything covered with roped canvas, stood with families gathered around them. So Perrin and the boys are preparing to leave to follow Fane. Or they are following Fane currently. After this, they return to the camp where Ingtar and Varen are.
So they have picked up his trail. So they've been searching all over Toman Head and the surrounding area for his trail, and this is where they pick it up?
Maybe 6 or 8 months ago, Hurin mutters. And it still stinks. The whole village council and their families. Why would they do a thing like that? Referring to when the Shanshan take these new villages, they round up the leaders and kill them. Just the leaders. That's what that scorch spot is in the center of each village we go through.
And it doesn't seem like they're doing that in all of the villages. Is it just the villages that resist, or is it
I would suppose randomly? It's just the ones that resist, but I don't know. We do see that same thing over and over, though.
The, like, burn circle in the middle of the village.
Yeah.
Honestly, think it's just random violence to prevent anyone from acting out, rather than a systematic, like, destruction of anyone who resists. It's just like, you don't know. Sometimes they're gonna demonstrate their power.
Hurin asks, why would they do a thing like that? Who knows why they do anything, Matt muttered. Shanshan don't seem to need a reason for killing people. None I can figure out anyway. But you're right. I think it's to demonstrate their power and say, like, here's your leaders. Here they're not anymore. Here's their ashes on the ground now. Yeah. Remember.
Because the Shanshan's biggest mission is to grab female channelers.
Mm-hmm.
And I often wonder if it's like where they start to abduct people, and then in towns where people resist, they burn the leaders to the ground.
Probably, because we know also that this isn't the Shanshan, this isn't the true Shanshan invasion force. This is the Forerunners, who are like there to lay the groundwork for the actual invasion.
And that's why they're going around reminding everybody to swear the oaths, so that when the actual folks come back, that they can say, you swore those oaths, now you need to obey and serve. Sort of almost preparing like a beachhead. Behind the Forerunners is this just massive continent of people. And if they don't have at least a little bit of land secured for them to unload in, there's going to be no place for them to... Basically, there's going to be too many people, and they're going to overwhelm a single point. Right. So essentially, the Forerunners are there to establish a beachhead.
Hurin, are you sure about Fane? Hurin? What? Oh, Fane. Yes. Hurin's nostrils flared, and right away he wrinkled his nose. There's no mistaking that, even as old as it is. It makes a Murdral smell like roses.
Fane, he stinks. Like 6 or 8 weeks later, he is just horrific.
Yeah. There was some sort of agitation up by the inn, people shouting and pointing. Not at Perrin and the other two, but at something Perrin could not see in the low hills cast east out of the village. Can we get the horses now? Matt said. That could be Shanshan. Perrin nodded, and they broke into a run from where they had tied their horses behind an abandoned house. As Matt and Hurin disappeared around the corner of the house, Perrin looked back toward the inn and stopped in astonishment. The Children of the Light were riding into town, a long column of them. So this is Bayar and Bornhold and their group. The White Cloaks, of course, that know Perrin.
Just happened to be in the same place. He is transported across the continent in a blink of, well, not a blink of an eye, but
kind of
for several months while they have been riding the hard way on foot.
Yeah.
But they've ended up in the same place. Several lifetimes and no time.
They run off, jump on their horses, and gallop back to where the rest of the group is.
And he's seen by Bornhold.
Yeah.
Not by Bayar, though. I think it's interesting. Later on, Bayar says that he sees Perrin on Toman Head. I'm not sure he actually ever sees him. I thought because only Bornhold sees him here.
I mean, they all take part in the battle, too.
Did he see him during the battle?
Maybe. I have no reason to disbelieve it.
I think he does see him in the battle. Okay.
But Perrin reins in and stops to see if they're being followed in a bit. I have this all highlighted. His ears were sharper than they had once been, but he heard no sounds of hoofbeats.
Is that an early one of our earliest references to his amplified hearing? Because I feel like we've seen the stuff with his sight a couple of times, but I don't remember and smell. But I don't recall anything to do with the.
This may be the
hearing.
first time we see this.
So this seems to be the first implication that his sense of hearing is amplified.
Reluctantly, he reached out with his mind in search of wolves. Almost immediately he found them. A small pack, lying up for the day in the hills above the village they had just left. There were moments of astonishment so strong he almost thought it was his own. These wolves had heard rumors, but they had not really believed that there were two legs who could talk to their kind. He sweated through the minutes it took to get past introducing himself. He gave the image of Young Bull, in spite of himself, and added his own smell, according to the custom among wolves. Wolves were great ones for formalities on first meetings, but finally, he managed to get his question through. They really had no interest in any two legs who could not talk to them, but at last, they glided down to take a look, unseen by the dull eyes of the two legs. After a time, images came back to him, that the wolves saw, white-cloaked men on horses crowding around a village, riding among the houses, riding around it, but none leaving, especially not westward. The
reason these wolves are so astonished is because they're nowhere near the other wolves that are familiar with Elias or Perrin because of the transportation across the continent.
Who have been far to the east.
Exactly. So he has to go through this whole explanation over again. I do imagine that he's just sitting there while not saying anything while the other two are either like arguing back and forth or just sitting there in silence. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Perrin let go of contact with the wolves gratefully. He was aware of Hurin and Matt looking at him. They aren't following, Perrin says. How can you be sure? Matt demanded. I am, he snapped. Then more softly, I just am. Well, if they aren't coming after us, I say we go back to Ingtar and get on Fane's trail. The dagger isn't coming any closer with us just standing here.
So yeah, Perrin's coming up with this knowledge. A little bit odd. Hurin and Rand are kind of looking at him like, what's going on over there?
I always wish the characters would be more upfront with each other, and I realize that's like a thing that RJ does over and over through the books where people are misunderstanding each other, but things work out anyway, and it would totally ruin a big plot point. But I just sometimes wish the boys would just be like, ooh, here's what I can do. Just get that out of the way.
Right. I mean, would it really affect anything if Perrin had said, Rand, I know you can channel. I figured it out. Listen, here's what I'm dealing with.
Yeah. I can talk to freaking wolves. It's weird, and it freaks me out.
And, like, they would bond over it, and, like, nothing in the plot would change.
Matt can just be like, my memory is filled with the memories of dead men.
Right.
And sometimes I think that I'm them.
Because they all end up figuring it out anyway. It's not like by the end they don't figure out how to, like, use each other and use each other's skills.
Yeah.
But if they just come out and said it, would have made things a lot easier.
Right.
Anyway, it's definitely a frustration with the books. It doesn't always boil out, but I could tell you were like a little frustrated with it right there. You were like, just say it.
Just get it out there and get it over with. The hardest part is starting something like that. Once you start talking, it'll happen.
And of course, since we're dealing with the White Cloaks, that's sort of that's why we're in Perrin's POV here. Is like the White Cloaks and Perrin are inexorably linked ever since his murder of the two of them,
and linked till the end, pretty much.
Yeah. His Tavernus just keeps throwing him together with the White Cloaks over and over and over again until he finally deals with them.
But as they started out again, Perrin could not help wondering what the White Cloaks were doing there.
And we switch to White Cloak POV.
Geoffram Bornhold. Oh, Geoffram Bornhold. I do learn, just slowly.
I was actually wanted you to read that. How do you say that?
Geoffram. That's the way I was reading it in my head for years and years.
Okay,
yeah.
Because
it's Geoffram. No, it totally makes sense. Right? Geoffram? That's a pretty cool name.
Jeff is a name, right? Like, that's the name that, like, GEOFF is a name that, like, people have.
Yeah, I don't know why. I guess it's because I haven't encountered that spelling very much. I've seen it in old texts of, when I was reading Game of Thrones, I read it as Geoffrey for like the whole time.
Nice.
Geoffram Bornhold peered down the village street, sitting his saddle while the legion spread through the small town and surrounded it. There had been something about the heavy-shouldered man who had dashed out of sight, something that tickled his memory. Yes, of course, the lad who claimed to be a blacksmith. What was his name?
Perrin A. Barra. Yeah, Perrin, why'd you give him your real name?
So the White Cloaks are rounding up all the villagers, putting them, and eventually push them all into an inn and nail the doors shut with a bunch of food supplies and tell them that they're posting guards on the outside, basically so that they can't spread word of the White Cloaks coming.
Geoffram is going on a direct attack against the Seanchan, so he doesn't need, and he doesn't want to pacify, in quotes, the village the way the questioners were, which is kill everybody.
Yeah.
But he also doesn't want them spreading word ahead of him, so he only needs a couple of days before the attack, so he's just going to convince them to stay in the barn for those couple of days.
The herding began anew, into the flat-roofed inn, where other children ransacked houses, searching for hammers and nails. Watching the sullen faces that filed past him, Bornhold thought it should be 2 or 3 more days before any of them found enough courage to break out of the inn and find there were no guards. 2 or 3 days was all he needed. But he did not intend to risk alerting the Seanchan to his presence now. Leaving enough men behind to make the questioners believe his entire legion was still scattered across Almouth Plain, he had brought more than 1,000 of the children, nearly the length of Toman Head, without giving alarm, so far as he knew. 3 skirmishes with Seanchan patrols, he goes on, and says the children had been effective, but I noted that when he ran into a Damani, that was with some soldiers at one point, he said he lost 50 soldiers trying to kill her.
And that's just a single Domani, a single pair of Domani and Soldam.
He also mentions that the only reason they were able to kill the pairs was with arrows, which kind of implies that none of the cavalry could actually get close to her.
If she can see him coming, she can take him down.
Yeah, easy peasy.
And it depends a little bit on the strength of that particular one, but a cavalry charge against a line of soldiers with a channeler behind them is a losing battle.
Yeah. Next thing I have is his short conversation with Bayar. Well, not short, but when I engage the enemy, Bayar, Bornhold said slowly, you will not take part. You will watch from a distance, and you will carry word to my son of what happens. So this is a plot that we see develop slowly over time, where Bayar follows through on these orders. He doesn't take part in the battle.
Right.
And he brings word back to Bornhold's son.
And I think what's happened is that Bornhold has committed himself and his legion to attack the Seanchan before he realized just how big of a force it was. And so he's snuck across all of Toman Head, and he's ready to attack, and he gets in this one skirmish and gets just decimated.
Yeah.
And he's realizing that he's put himself in a no-win position, where he thinks he still has to attack these Seanchan because he can't retreat. He doesn't have the resources to get away. And, he has faith in the light that these are dark friends, and the light will protect him.
But he does have the thought he no longer expected to live to leave Toman Head.
Now he sees that, basically, he still has to attack, but his force is going to be overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And so he leaves Bayar behind. I think the reason he attacks is that he really has cut off his retreat. There's just too many people on Toman Head. I don't think he could sneak back away. He's left too much evidence behind him trying to sneak in that he wouldn't be able to sneak out without engaging.
When you have found my son, he should be with Lord Captain Eatman Valda, near Tarvalin, and told him you will ride to Amador and report to the Lord Captain Commander Pedro Neal personally. And Bayar, tell Pedro Neal how we were used by the questioners.
My big question is, why Bayar? Couldn't you pick someone else who wasn't totally freaking moronic to carry your message?
He is a good soldier. You've got to give him that.
Oh, they keep saying that. I mean, and the few times we do see Bayar fight, he is excellent with the axe.
Yeah.
I mean, Lan takes him down like he's, taking out the trash, but that's Lan.
Well, Lan is basically Batman, so.
Right. On the land scale, he's nothing. But on a standard soldier scale, he's actually a pretty competent fighter.
Yeah.
And one of the better fighters of the White Cloak. So maybe Bornhold sends him back because he thinks he's got a better chance of making it because he's one of the best fighters.
And, he'll loyally follow out the orders. He may be crazed, but he'll certainly follow the orders with devotion. Here, I have this highlighted. It gave him a sinking feeling, a world where Aes Sedai wielded the power in battle.
I think we talked a little bit about that when Matt was calling them Aes Sedai, and they're like, well, they're not Aes Sedai. And he's like, whatever, they can channel. That makes them Aes Sedai.
Yeah. People don't really understand the difference, but for them it doesn't really matter. In practice, in actual practice, fighting a Damani is just as dangerous as fighting an Aes Sedai.
They have to understand that it's a different social order, that
right.
The Aes Sedai of the White Tower do not control the Shan Domani.
Right.
And the White Cloaks pretty much put everyone in the same bucket. If you can channel, you're an Aes Sedai and you're all working together. If you're a dark friend, you're evil and you're all working together. If you're an enemy of the White Cloaks, you're a dark friend and you're all working together. And so they just assume that everyone who is their enemy is coordinating. And so they don't understand a lot of the motivations because they don't understand that there may be multiple other factions working against each other, even among the Dark Cloaks.
I'm nodding. The Dark Friends. You said Dark Cloaks at one point.
Dark Cloaks, those are the Dark Friend White Cloaks. The Dark
I like
Cloaks.
It. Dark Cloaks.
Jacob Carradine is a Dark Cloak. I'm sure there are others. We do not think Bayar is a Dark Cloak.
No, he's just crazy.
Not yet, but after Bornhald's legion is wiped out, there is some evidence that Grendel gets to him and gives him some compulsion.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
I still haven't seen direct evidence of it in the
Looking forward
books.
to getting there. I think that's book 3 that happens.
If anyone has a link to a quote that supports that, I'd love to see it. I sort of researched it, and I like the theory, but I haven't, with not a deep search, but with a casual search, I haven't found anything that directly supports it. Other than Bayar being absolutely fucking, crazy and trying to kill Perrin beyond all sanity.
He's a fanatic.
Yeah. But it's hard to know whether that's just him being a fanatic or whether there's compulsion involved.
A thought came to him, and he frowned at the end. Perrin, he muttered. That was his name. Perrin, from the Two Rivers. The Dark Friend, my Lord Captain? Perhaps, Bayar. He was not entirely certain himself.
Discord is saying the 2 pieces of information that say that Bayar was compelled is, number 1, it says so in the Companion.
And Towers of Midnight, Chapter 38. After Slayer fails to kill Perrin, Grendel thinks that she still has one more tool. I thought that was Aram?
Aram is before that.
Oh, that's it. Masema.
Yeah. At the time when it was happening, I don't see much support for it.
Vague.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, it does say it in the Companion, which is roughly canon.
Yeah.
Roughly.
Mackenzie is saying in the epilogue of Towers of Midnight, Grendel blames her failure to kill Perrin on Isam and Bayar. Okay. Yeah, I can get behind that.
With our powers combined, guys.
Yeah. I just wish there was a scene where a little bit earlier on where Bayar had a dream or Grendel had just come from somewhere. It just feels very retconned to me.
Bornhold tells Bayar to round up the men. They're not going to stop for their meal. They've got to get out of here because he knows that he saw the people leaving, specifically Perrin. And he knows words might get out. And then, of course, the last line of his perspective is, far above their heads, a huge, winged shape circled, unnoticed.
I think that a lot of Bayar's belief that they were betrayed by Perrin is because at this point they are spotted by the Shan Chan. And so Bayar's thinking, oh, we were spotted. The only person I saw was that dark friend, Perrin.
Yeah.
When in fact, overhead, totally unnoticed, was the Rockin that actually knows them and actually set them up to be betrayed and attacked.
And you don't miss a 1,000-man army from the sky
like
that. Especially in white. Like, what a choice for, you know?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, the portal stone creatures, the Rockin, the Toe Rockin, the Grom, Korom, all those animals are huge advantages in battle when they're trained. Shreddit, war elephants have always been kind of beneficial.
Oh, yeah.
So the Rockin are basically flying scouts. The Toe Rockin are bombers. The elephants are tanks. The Korim are like mobile infantry. And then on top of that, you've got channelers to kick butt.
Cornerstone of the army. Wait, what does the toe prefix mean? Rockin', toe rockin'?
I thought it was just big.
They are different, aren't they? Are they different?
As far as I know, they're just bigger. They carry a lot more people and equipment.
Huh. So you'd have to, climb this thing to get on it, right? Because
the big one, the Toe Rockin', yeah.
Sit with their back. They would sit with their back straight, I would think. Sit up. I'm just imagining climbing up the side of one and getting into a saddle,
I'm pretty much imagining a bird on
a spaceship
wire.
Liftoff when they're sitting facing the sky.
Yeah, just like the way a bird sits on two legs, and then when it takes off, it's flying horizontally, but when it lands, it's sitting upright.
Yeah, that's what I'm imagining.
And apparently the Toe Rockin are brown instead of gray, where the Rockin are gray.
We switch to Rand's perspective here. In the clearing, amid the hilltop thicket where they had made their camp, Rand worked the forms with his sword. He wanted to keep from thinking. He had had his chances to search with Hurin and for Fane's trail. They all had, in 2s and 3s, so they would not attract attention, and they all found nothing so far. Now they waited for Matt and Perrin to come back with the sniffer. They should have been back hours ago.
One more note on Toe Rockin.
Yeah.
They're herbivores.
Oh.
Rockin are omnivores and will eat you. Toe Rockin are plant eaters.
Varen's murmuring to herself and writing in the dirt with a stick. We see what that means later.
And we know she's writing out the wheel, we think?
She's thinking about prophecies and how this is going to work. And by this, I mean the next day or two.
Yeah, the 5 ride forth.
Yeah, for a return.
We think the 5 ride forth was that part of the Dark Prophecy in the beginning?
I don't think so. I think it's...
No. It's from the Koreathon cycle. 5 ride forth and 4 return. Above the watchers over the waves shall he proclaim himself, and bannered across the sky in fire. So it is from the Koreathon cycle, and it is linked to the watchers over the waves, which is linked to Toman Head. So Varen knows before they go to Toman Head that this part of the prophecy applies. And so she's sort of ensuring that it gets fulfilled so that the dragon will be bannered across the sky in fire. So she's setting up the final confrontation that's going to cause Rand to be proclaimed above the sky.
Hashtag Varen knows. I like that people are using that.
Yeah, I have a question. She draws in the 5 spokes and then erases one of them. Do you think she erases the one she drew in for Ingtar?
Yeah, I think she knows.
Yeah.
Because it's only Matt, Perrin, Rand, Ingtar, Hurin.
And she knows the 3 Ta'veren are probably going to be pretty safe.
Yeah.
So it's either Hurin or Ingtar. And since I think we've already speculated that they've had conversations and it's possible she's revealed to herself as Black Aja, she probably suspects that he's a dark friend and is willing to bet that something's going to happen with him.
It's kind of cool that they're both there together right now, and they're both dark friends who sacrifice themselves. And basically, Varen's a long-term double agent, but Ingtar is, I guess, a short-term double agent.
Sacrifices himself for redemption.
He stabs the dark in the back.
Yeah.
Kind of. Gray friends. I like that, James.
I always call it the purple oddjaw. Little black, little light, little blue. And yeah, Varen was never really interested in being a dark friend. It was a join or die situation. Yeah. And so I think her warder is in a similar situation. She found a dark friend who wanted out and bonded him.
Heron waiting in the rushes, Ingtar said. He sat with his back against the tree, sliding a sharpening stone along his sword and watching Rand. You should not be bothering with that one. It leaves you completely open. Lan says it's good for developing balance, Rand retorts. What you practice too often, Ingtar replies. You use without thinking. You'll put your sword in the other man with that, if you're quick, but not before he has his through your ribs.
Which is quite a bit of foreshadowing there for the end of the book.
Yeah.
When that's
Rand
exactly what happens.
It's only for balance, Ingtar.
Uh-huh. Or when you're willing to sacrifice yourself to kill the person in front of you. Which is really, I think, what Rand comes to the conclusion that, like, I don't think I can win this battle in any way other than a tie.
Yeah.
In book 1, he only wins because he has the power of the Eye of the World. In this one, he only wins because he's willing to sacrifice himself.
He's willing to be stabbed to give stab.
And I think in the third one, he only wins because of Kalendor.
Yeah. You will know when it is time to sheath the sword, sheepherder. I wish they'd come back, Rand says. As if his wish had been a signal, Uno spoke with quiet urgency. Bloody horsemen coming, my lord. There's a lot of tension, and everybody pulls their weapons out, but it's the boys. The tension faded as Hurin led the others into the clearing at a trot, and came again as he spoke. We found the trail, Lord Ingtar. We followed it almost to Falma, Matt said. We found white cloaks, too, Perrin says, swinging down from his saddle, hundreds of them.
Yep, so Matt's thinking about the dagger and Fane, Perrin's thinking about the white cloaks.
Yeah. White cloaks, Ingtar exclaimed, frowning. Here? Yes.
No, that is pretty random, honestly. Like
it doesn't really make any sense, but...
Well, and Bornhald is disobeying orders. He, the questioners have wanted him to stay on the Almoth Plain. They wanted him to stay basically creating chaos on the plane under the orders of the Forsaken. And so by being here on Toman Head, he is directly contradicting the orders that were given to him from the questioners, which comes from the Dark Friends. All right, so we left off with Varen setting up the trip into Falma and trying to pick out the 5 folks who are going to go.
I will start right after she gives the Wheel Weaves as the Wheel Will speech. Mm-hmm. I feel like we've talked about that plenty. With her foot, Varen scrubbed out a wheel as she had drawn in the dirt. In its place, she drew 2 short lines that touched on one end. Ingtar and Hurin, and Matt, as he can sense the dagger if he comes close enough. You do want to go, don't you, Matt? Matt appeared torn, but he gave a jerky nod. I have to, don't I? I have to find that dagger. Third line made a bird track. Varen looked sideways at Rand. I'll go, he said. This is why I came. An odd light appeared in the Aes Sedai's eyes, a knowing glimmer that made him uneasy. To help Matt find the dagger, he said sharply, and Ingtar find the horn. And Fane, he added to himself. I have to find Fane if it isn't already too late. Varen scratched a 4th line, turning the bird track to a lopsided star. And who else? She said softly. She held the stick, poised. Me, Perrin said. A hair before Loyal chimed in with, I think I would like to go too. Perrin spoke first, Varen said, as if that settled it. She added a 5th line, and drew a circle around all 5. 5 ride forth, she murmured.
I love that, because Varen manipulates exactly who's going on that trip.
Yeah.
She makes sure that only exactly the people she wants to go. And, when she wants Matt to volunteer, she looks at him and gets him to volunteer. When everyone volunteers all at once, she's like, well, Perrin said it first. She could have picked anything else,
So she picks Ingtar, Hurin, and 3 to Varen.
And for the same reason that Moraine takes the boys to the Eye of the World.
Yeah.
And I really do think she's setting up the prophecy so that Rand will proclaim himself as the dragon.
Oh, yeah.
The 5 will ride forth prophecy.
Uno tries to go. Varen calls him silly and basically says, if you're too big of a group, if everyone goes, you'll be obvious. 20 Shinaran soldiers mounted with lances will attract attention.
And there are no Ogier, so Loyal can't go.
Yeah. She was like, Loyal himself will attract as much attention as all the soldiers do.
And I can't go because I'll be detected.
Yeah.
Aes Sedai. Soldam will detect me. Which is kind of remarkable that Nynaeve and Elaine escape as long as they do.
I did like hear that Varen explains, the only way I could help you would be if I was channeled the power, and that would be no help at all if I brought those down on you. And by those, she means Damani. And it just made me think of that scene in Steading Sofu, where Ingtar and the boys and the Fardaris Mai run into each other, and they're all pulling out their weapons, and Varen's just yelling at them, and that's all she can do.
Yeah.
It's kind of a funny scene because we think of her as this like powerful Aes Sedai, and she is, but she's limited.
In a lot of ways, she relies solely on the power.
She's an old woman. Like, she's without the power.
She's a smart old woman.
Sure. But not dangerous on the battlefield without the power.
And I like this. One might well feel women, or a man for that matter, channeling, as a subtle little hint to Rand. But that's not the case as far as we know.
No, I think Varen is kind of implying that, well, what I got out of this is she doesn't know what the Shan-Chan channeler's abilities are, and maybe they could detect a man channeling.
One might well feel a woman or a man. So
yeah.
They might feel a man, is what she's saying, I guess.
Which they can't.
But it's very directly a message to Rand to say, make sure if you do channel, keep the power down, just in case.
Yeah. A man, Ingtar snorted. Varen Sedai, why add problems? We have enough already without supposing men channeling. But it would be well if you were there. If we have need of you. No, you five must go alone. Her foot scrubbed across the wheel drawn in the dirt, partially obliterating it. She studied each of them in turn, intent and frowning. 5 will ride forth. For a moment, it seemed that Ingtar would ask again, but meeting her level gaze, he shrugged and turned to Hurin.
I like that she just breaks one of the spokes. And I think it's the one at the top, which would make sense because that would be the first one she drew, which was Ingtar's spoke.
Yeah. Ingtar shrugs and turns to Hurin. How long to reach Falma? The sniffer scratched his head. If we left now and rode through the night, we could be there by sunrise tomorrow morning. Then that is what we'll do. I'll waste no more time. All of you saddle your horses. Uno, I want you to bring the others along behind us, but keep out of sight, and do not let anyone... And it cuts off.
Yeah, it's just Ingtar keeps going on with his instructions, and Rand kind of stops paying attention and checks out the wheel.
Rand peered at the sketched wheel as Ingtar went on with his instructions. It was a broken wheel now, with only 4 spokes. For some reason, that made him shiver. He realized Varen was watching him, dark eyes bright and intent like a bird's. It took an effort to pull his gaze away and begin getting his things together. You're letting fancies take you, he told himself irritably. She can't do anything if she isn't there.
That's what you think. How much do you want to bet that the reason Ishmael finds Rand is that Varen lets him know as a dark friend and passes that message on?
I don't think so, but it is possible. How does Ishmael know that Rand is there?
That is a good question.
Yeah, any number of ways, right? Septon, we've talked about that before. Lanfear and Ishmael seem to have the ability to track down Ta'Veren just by their effect on the pattern. So we know that. We know Varen and Ingtar are dark friends. Ishmael, can get a lot of information from Rand's dreams, which also could be what Lanfear's doing, but we also have what we debated about a couple weeks ago, where Barthanas was killed by somebody who was upset that he allowed the Thane to pass through his waygate on his way to Falma. So that upset someone. We don't know who, but that person brutally killed, or had Barthanas brutally killed over the Horn.
Our assumption is that was Slayer under the orders of Ishmael. Or
our first golem.
Yes.
Attack.
Sorry. Did I say Slayer? I meant the golem under the orders.
We also said
Ishmael.
it could possibly have been Slayer, but
yeah, I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
It's not a style.
And so then Ishmael found out that Rand was heading to Falma 4 months ago.
Right.
So he's just there waiting.
If it was the golem, which would be attached to Ishmael, then Ishmael knows where Rand is going to be months in advance.
So I assume he's just been on Toman Head, and when the horn is blown, Ishmael's like, oh, well, there he is.
Yeah.
Because reading, I just went back and looked at it. Ishmael pops up like almost as soon as the horn is blown. The fog pops up, Rand goes riding off, and boom, there's Ishmael right in front of him and pulling him into the world of dreams.
That makes sense to me.
I just ate this orange bell pepper. It's delicious. It was like super sweet and crunchy and tasty. I haven't had a
People have made fun of me
time.
for that, but I have done that.
I ate it like an apple. It was fucking fantastic. I like needed something snacky, and that was just in the fridge.
Yeah, I think everyone hates green bell pepper.
Well, green is unripe. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically all it is. It's an unripe bell pepper.
They're not as sweet.
I subscribe to Imperfect Produce. They take surplus produce from the grocery store and deliver it to you for cheap.
It's cool. We
That's
get the
cool.
ugly potatoes.
Yeah. Squash is nature's candy after you roast it. Once you roast it, it's just like pure sugar.
Little cinnamon.
Yeah.
I've been hanging out at this place now that I live up here called the Radio Room up on Alberta Street. Yeah, super conducive to, it's a huge place and there's like 2 bars in it and table service and stuff, but you just pick a table and there's even, did you go to the upstairs?
I did not go
like
upstairs.
An outdoor patio that's upstairs.
I totally missed that.
I didn't even know it was there until recently, but I really like it because there's not really seating, so you just like pick a place and sit. So it's a good place to like, I can sit on my computer and do work or just read for hours and hours and nobody cares. And just keep refilling my coffee.
I did try and go in on Saturday, and it was not
Saturday night.
just Saturday.
Yeah.
Like during brunch time, and it was packed.
I believe it.
That's not a great time to go in. So I went back during the weekday, and
Go on like a Wednesday night.
Totally. It was dead. It was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have a kale bacon salad that I get a lot.
I had a sandwich of some sort that was really delicious.
They've got a lot of stuff. Their fries are pretty killer. They're like garlic truffle fries.
Nice.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah, I just enjoyed sitting there, and it was a good place to sit and get some work done.
That's why I've been going there a lot.
Yeah.
You can pick a table in like the back corner somewhere and nobody will bother you forever.
Right. Because like I've got all these other places I've been going, but I've become such a regular at the coffee shop and the bar that like now I have to talk to people when I go in, and it's really hard to get work done. So I have to like go somewhere where nobody knows me.
Also, I don't know if they hire attractive people on purpose, but the staff there is like distracting in a good way.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?